Hello.
Hello, Vernon. How are you?
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, Living Color is about to return to Brazil. What are your fondest memories of previous performances here?
Oh my goodness, what are my fondest memories? I remember we played outdoors in a kind of amphitheater in Rio, and that was a pretty fun gig. Obviously, playing Rock in Rio, playing, with special guest Steve Vai, and that was really, really fun. That was really a
E,
lot of fun.
Funnily enough, it's Rock in Rio week, and the band's last performance in Brazil was at the last edition of Rock in Rio.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that night in particular?
What, you mean the first Rock in Rio thing?
The
Or
last
the one,
with
the
Sivai.
last one, the last one. Oh man, I was dressed like a black cowboy, and uh, and I remember looking at Steve's hands, and he was doing the cult of personality riff, and I was like, "Wow, your fingering is totally different than mine." I remember that was pretty funny, and yeah, that was pretty cool.
And what can the fans expect from the shows in Brazil? Are there any special surprises plans for the performances?
Um, yeah, we there are a couple of songs that we don't normally play. And one of them, I think we're going to be playing Sacred Ground, and we haven't played Sacred Ground in a really, really long time. And we've been playing it now. We just added it to our set list for play opening for Extreme, and it's been pretty cool because it's also a song that's really a fan song. It's not like a song that we play all the time. Also, we brought back the song "Bye," and we haven't played "Bye" in a long time. So that's at least a couple of the things that we're going to be doing. And we've been playing the song by the MC5, "Kick Out the Jams," and that's been really fun. So kind of in tribute to Mr. Wayne Kramer. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to all of that.
What are the criteria for choosing the songs for a set list?
If we've been playing a song, part of it is like we have to, there's certain songs that we play, and okay, for example, we play Middleman a lot, but recently we've been playing Leave It Alone. I don't think we played Leave It Alone a lot in Brazil, so or it's been a long time since we've done that. We recently we're playing Never Satisfied, and that's a song that we didn't play. We didn't play that the last time we were in Brazil. So so like that. And then it's thinking, okay, tempos, feelings, keys, those are the kind of things. We have a few songs in C minor. So thinking, okay, are we going to play Ignorance is Bliss or versus, if we play Middleman and Ignorance is Bliss, we don't play them back to back. So things like,
Living Color emerged at a time when radio and MTV were dominated by the so-called hair bands. I'd like you
yeah.
to talk a little about that time. What was it like to emerge in almost against the current?
Well, in a way, we were part of a group of bands that really came out of the CBGB's New York kind of punk scene. And even though we were not punk per se, but punk elements were part of what we did. It was a kind of, we were doing something that was almost alternative in a way that was unusual because, we're influenced by jazz, we're influenced by fusion, we're influenced by punk, we're influenced by funk, we're influenced by, I mean, I played in the avant-garde jazz group, the Decoding Society. So all of those things. And part of the influence of why that is like thinking I grew up at a time when the Beatles, from album to album, the Beatles changed. I remember like hearing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it freaked me out that it was the same band that did I Want to Hold Your Hand. It's a completely different thing. The other thing that I remember was hearing Sly and the Family Stone, Family Affair, and it was so different. There was nothing like it. So the idea of doing something that's not like what everybody else was doing had entered my mind. Like there was a time when a band would come out with a sound, and the sound would be, how does this sound? How does this work? But it would work. Like Al Green records were really interesting. The mixes, there's a lot of organ, there's this funky guitar, or War. War had this harmonica player and a sax player. It was a very interesting instrumentation. So it wasn't like a sameness for me hearing popular music. There wasn't like a sameness all the time. And by the time we were coming out, there was a same, like bands were kind of doing the same thing. They did one thing. The songs would be fast or they would be slow, but the sound or the would not be different. And that's it's like Queen. Queen, no Queen single sounds the same. Every think about Bohemian Rhapsody, how detailed that is. It's extraordinary. But they also did We Will Rock You. We Will Rock You is incredibly basic. It's incredibly basic. And the idea of a band doing that, and then they did, rockabilly, and then they did ballads, so that influenced me in terms of not just styles, but that's the way bands were. Bands did things different from each other. But by the time you got into the 80s, there was this whole thing in the industry, right? The corporate rock thing. And everything, all the things that were different were starting to disappear. But that music forged my aesthetic. Hearing bands doing different things from each other, doing different things from song to song, was a huge influence. Like hearing Painted Black and Sympathy for the Devil, they couldn't be more different. So even the popular bands today, they did different stuff. So that, so to me, having, Cult of Personality and Broken Hearts on the same record was not weird to me. It was weird to other people, but to me, that's the way music. It would go to places. It would, the whole idea of music being a journey to take you somewhere. That had changed where bands weren't trying to take you anywhere. They're trying to keep you in the same space all the time. And that's the difference.
In the early 90s, hair metal gave way to grunge. How did you see this change? Unlike the 80s hard rock, grunge was a much more authentic and collectively conscious style, right?
Right. Well, grunge. Okay, so when I first heard, I was in a record store called Rocks in Your Hand, and I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for the first time because I wanted to start. So what's new? So, oh, you got to check this out. And when I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit," I had never heard the term grunge. But what I thought when I heard it, I thought, oh, this band, the verses are REM and the chorus is Metallica. That's what I thought when I heard it. There was no genre, so it was like, but that's what it sounded like to me. It was like that was exactly it. It was a kind of REM thing, and then suddenly the chorus was super heavy, and I was like totally with it. I was like, man, this is great. And then I heard grunge, and I was like, oh, okay. So then the press came up with a title and a category, and bands were forced into the category. Well, like Alice in Chains would. There's a completely. He's. He's doing choral music. He like, the Wood is like choral music, and then it's got this whole other thing going to. Then when the first time I heard Soundgarden, I said, "Oh, this band reminds me a little bit of Black Sabbath." Black Sabbath was an influence on Soundgarden, and yet and still they were tossed into grunge. And the other thing about the bands from Seattle, the Hendrix's DNA. is in a lot of Seattle bands. Even a lot, you know what I mean? It's not obvious, but Hendrix's DNA is in a lot of those bands. The Screaming Trees, whatever, the Melvins, that DNA is in there. So to me, I was attracted to it because it was the same kind of thing. It's mixing different things up. It's like something kind of light and something heavy and dark combined. The first time I heard, you know, um, Rusty Cage is a cowboy tune. I mean, Rusty Cage, the whole thing about I'm gonna break my wrist. That's like a Johnny Cash could have sing. In fact, Johnny Cash did do Rusty Cage. But when I first heard it, that's what it made me. Oh, Johnny Cash would. This is a song that sounds like a Johnny Cash song. It's crazy.
I was at the Living Color concert in Rio de Janeiro in 2019. You dedicated the show that night to Marielle Franco. At the time, who killed Marielle was the question that everyone was asking. Today, we know who ordered the murder and who carried it out.
Wow.
Uh, they're all in prison. I would like you to comment on the case.
Well, the wheels of justice turn really slowly, and I do the fact that the perpetrator was caught. I mean, because it was because it was someone who was so progressive, who was really trying to bring people together, who was trying to fight stereotypes, you know, around race and sexuality, and the fact that they were targeted for destruction, and that now, you know, those perpetrators are caught. That's great because something like that can't just disappear, and because the people also demanded answers. They didn't just shrug. They wanted to know who did this thing. So I'm very happy to hear that.
One of the main characteristics of Living Color, in my opinion, is the timelessness of the lyrics. But at the same time, the fact that the lyrics are timeless means that time has passed and some issues you wrote about remain the same.
Well,
uh,
it's a funny thing in a way.
hello? Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, we're back. Right. Yeah.
So, time has passed and the issues you wrote about remain the same. I like to
Mhm.
know, among the issues you addressed in albums like Vivid, Time's Up, and Stain, just to name those released over 30 years ago, what has improved?
Things like, okay, so the fact that Obama was elected the president of the United States, um, that was a kind of, that a black person. Hello.
Hello. Man, you're freezing. Hello. Yeah, man, it's
Yeah,
tough.
technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are you freezing again? Okay. Oh, I saw you move.
Yeah. So, you're speaking of Obama.
Yeah, I was saying that, the fact that Obama was elected is a real movement. The fact that he was elected also freaked people totally out. So then Donald Trump gets elected, which is completely wild to me. And of course, y'all understand it's because of Bolsonaro in Brazil, who's called the Brazilian Trump. And this reaction back and forth between the right and the left and the center, it's interesting. And part of the thing when I look at all of these three leaders and the song Cult of Personality, all three of them um, and Lula too, right? All three of them are kind of like that. They all are also part of the same idea that led to Cult of Personality, talking about FDR and everybody else. So that's the thing that's so interesting is that people still fall under the sway. And one of the things about the authoritarians, right, is that they really are actively creating the cult around themselves. They're creating the story that they are the country, that they are Brazil, that they are America. And many people fall for the story. They fall for a glorious narrative. And this is something that's I don't know if it's part of human nature. It's definitely part of political culture. And it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. And every, like you look at any schoolyard and who's the kid that's going to be the kid that all the other kids, follow. It's weird stuff.
Today, Living Color will take part in an online event called Musicians for Kamala. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
the organizers say that the event is more than a fundraiser. It's a call to action for all who believe in democracy, equality, and
Yeah.
progress. How do you see the
Mhm.
importance of artists using their voice to defend causes like this one?
Well, we're people. We're people, and we're subject to the same thing. People just like some artists are going to be conservative, other artists are not conservative. I'm not a conservative, but weirdly enough, Living Color has some conservative fans, which is strange to me, but that's a fact because and this is a beautiful thing about music. Music speaks to different people in different ways. And a lot of musicians avoid being political, but I've never been a Donald Trump fan ever. I've never been a fan of his from back in the day. I'm old enough to remember when he was denying Black people housing in Queens. So he, to me, like the fact that he invested in casinos, he believes that people are suckers. That's what he believes, and I'm not going to support that. I don't support that. So, I mean, that's kind of why I'm doing the thing. And is Kamala perfect? Of course not. Of course not. Are there going to be issues? Of course there are. But in democracy, you talk about and you struggle with those issues. Donald Trump is about utter loyalty to him, 100% loyalty to him. And if you're not loyal to him at all times, you're the enemy. And I don't agree with that. And I will never agree to that.
What disastrous consequences would a possible victory of Donald Trump at the polls bring to the US and to
Okay.
international politics?
Well, before Donald Trump is even elected, right now, his vice president came up with a story that in Springfield, Ohio, Haitians are eating domestic pets. It's insane. It's insane. And people are being threatened right now. And these are not illegal migrants. These are legal residents of Ohio. And he's doing that just because he can. You know, and it's crazy to me. Donald Trump has said he wants to suspend the Constitution. Donald Trump has said he wants to be a dictator. He loves dictators. Are you kidding me? There's no way and people are excusing it as if that's just something he's saying. Why don't you believe it? Why do you refuse to believe it? That's the cult. That's the cult of personality around Donald Trump. People they're seeing it with their own eyes. They're hearing it, and they're denying what they're hearing. And I take him completely seriously. I take him completely seriously. He means exactly what he says.
Aside from the whole message, what else do you think has helped Living Color remain relevant for almost 4 decades?
Well, the thing is, a lot of things that we sang about, like Time's Up. The song Time's Up was written to be a tribute to the Bad Brains. And then Corey came up with these lyrics about the environment. And this was really before, well, the conversation about climate change hadn't become massive, but there's been, I mean, it had been on because of Earth Day, so the concerns have been there. But Time's Up is more relevant now. The Earth is getting hotter. Summers are getting more unbearable. Los Angeles was 120 degrees, and still there are people denying what's going on. So that's an element as to why Living Color is still relevant. It's like the things we talked about a long time ago, we're still dealing with them now, and we're dealing with them now more than when we were back in the day.
What are the band's plans for the future? Is there a new album in the works or other projects that you're
We
developing?
we we're started recording some songs for the next record. You know, we will start recording songs for the next record. Yep.
What is your view of the current music scene?
Um, there's some interesting. I mean, I like this band Hiatus Coyote. You know, I think they're a really good band. There's some interesting. You know, there's some interesting new things going on. I like this artist No Name, this rapper named No Name. I think she's fantastic. Um, I think there's a weird thing going on with technology in music. And this whole idea of AI created music is weird. And because AI art, AI in photography, AI in terms of writing, I mean, it's okay. People are kind of freaking out now, but they have no idea that the fact is a lot of stuff is like it's kind of like a parrot talking, right? But it's not staying there. It's not staying there. It's not static. At a certain point, the AI photograph will look exactly like a photograph. You know, and AI art is gonna look exactly like whatever you prompt. You say you want it to look like a particular painter, it's going to look exactly like that. It's not there now, but it's coming. And on a certain level, there's a good path for AI as an assistant to creative endeavors in terms of coding, and there's a bad path for AI, it being weaponized against people is a real thing. And so both things are on the table, and also throw in unintended consequences. And that's part of the drama that, you know, some people are saying, well, it's reached its limits. I don't think it has. I don't think it has.
How do you see your evolution as a guitarist and musician from Living Color's first albums to your most recent work?
Well, I kind of feel as a guitarist, like one of the things for me is I've been in a process of refining the impulses that I brought to it, in terms of I don't want to play the same solo every night. That's not my tradition. I came up with a more of an improvising tradition, and I'm trying to always always keep working on my voice in terms of clarity, in terms of the ideas that I want to put out there. Um, and that's kind of the constant goal. It's never the case that I'm satisfied with where I am. But it's also like, thinking about different fingerings, thinking there's certain technical things, and also the feeling that I want to come across, and also getting out of my own way. Because if I want to be a certain thing, if I want to, man, I really want to play well, that's the enemy of me playing well. So I'm constantly like, how do I get out of my own way? How do I get out of a spiral? How do I ignore the person scowling at me because they're because they don't understand it, they don't get it. I mean, some of my heroes also were very misunderstood. Ornette Coleman, Eric Dolphy. Eric Dolphy is a huge influence on me, and I think a lot of people, they just hear a scramble of notes, and I say, man, he speaks to me in a kind of very in a poetry. And I would to get closer to that, as opposed to, as much as I love Hendrix and Alan Holdsworth and all these folks who influenced me, I'm really trying to come into a space of my own, and that's not easy. It's people are more satisfied if they hear something that they've heard before. You play Eddie Van Halen lick, or you play an Alan Holdsworth lick, or play, a George Benson lick. People are like, wow. But if you come up with your own thing and nobody's heard it before, they could get it or not get it. But that's something that I've been, that's something that I've been telling people, in terms of if I do any kind of workshop or class. I tell people, you know what, you got to find yourself. You have to have the courage to be yourself. And also you have to do the work to improve or to refine your voice. But you have to do the thing that you love about the guitar players you love is they do their own thing, and yeah, that can be a challenge.
What inspires you to continue making music after so many years of career?
Because music is awesome. Because music is awesome, and music can be dead ass simple, or it can be complicated. That's the beautiful thing. Like, I am so jealous of Jack White. I love Jack White. Part of the reason why I love Jack White is he always comes up with a riff that is basic, that nobody thought of. He is like awesome. The riffs he comes up, and the riffs are like basic chordal things, or basic line things, like Seven Nation Army. Trust me, when Seven Nation Army came up, all the guitar players slapped their foreheads, because the riff is so basic and it's so obvious. And I remember with Seven Nation Army, like Metallica, everybody, we did a version of Seven Nation Army because it was like, oh my God. And I love that about Jack White. He does that again and again. I really admire him.
Well, and as for my last question, what would you say was the most valuable lesson you learned on your career in music?
The most valuable lesson I learned is persistence, is persistence, is to keep going, keep going in the face of keep going when people say you're not going to make it, keep going when people say they don't like it, keep going keep going regardless of what people say. That was the greatest thing. And I remember the first time somebody said, man, I don't, you know what, I don't know anybody that thinks like you. And and one of my great heroes, a local guy named Arthur Rames, who's an amazing instrumentalist. And he looked at me and said, Vernon, just keep practicing. And when I first heard it, I thought it was a put down. And then I realized it was the greatest gift. It was the greatest gift. You know, keep practicing. Regardless, just keep going.
Vernon, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.
I did, even with the dropouts.
See you in October in Rio. Thank you so much.
Right, hey man, hopefully we'll shake hands, man. Look forward to it, bro.
Look forward to it. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.